Hey, I am Mustafa Sharif. Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I'm looking forward this episode. It's going to be super interesting. We're going to talk about how COVID-19 affected our city from the architecture, urban planning, and design point of view. I believe that reflection is not enough. We need to take action as well. I have the pleasure to welcome the founding partner and the CEO of Gehl, Helle Søholt. Hey, and welcome, Helle.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you.
And how is it going with the COVID-19 situation? I hope everything is fine.
We are managing okay, but of course it's a major crisis that is impacting both companies, institutions, and cities worldwide.
Mm. And how is it going now? You're still like, are you back to work at the office in Copenhagen, Denmark?
We are back working in our Copenhagen office. However, both our offices in the States, in New York and in San Francisco, are still, all the staff there are still working from home. So it is three very unique and different situations in those three cities.
How is it in Denmark? I heard that you're on the third phase of opening and coming back to the city.
That's correct. So the office is open. We are at a 50% capacity still in the office. So some people are still working from home, but in many ways, the feel of the city is starting to become more sort of normal in the sense that we see public life, we see restaurants and bars opening, we see even fitness centers and shopping centers opening up again this week, and even the borders of Denmark are opening up, at least towards Germany, Iceland, and Norway.
And that's make us feel a bit sad that you're not opening towards Sweden. But how was it during the back days when you were working at home? Did you find it easy to work digitally?
Well, surprisingly, I found it very, very easy for us to make the shift. Within less than 24 hours, we were working from home offices across all our three offices. For us, it has not been difficult to go completely virtual and digital because we are already working globally. We are already engaging with our clients virtually using all kinds of platforms. Having said that, of course, there are certain things that are more challenged. It's been impossible for us to go on site visits, for example. We have had to use other digital platforms for community engagement, and it's also slightly more difficult to engage on more creative workshops and brainstorming. However, I think we are relatively coping very very easily in that sense, and we've actually seen quite innovative new approaches, new surveys, and we've been able to make completely new use of software that we were not using before. So
Yeah.
that's also amazing to see.
Yeah, that's very great to hear as well. And Hela, you are our storyteller for this episode. So how would you like to introduce yourself and please tell us what are you passionate about?
Well, as you mentioned, I am the CEO and the founding partner of Gehl. I shaped the organization from the very beginning 20 years ago. But apart from that, I would maybe categorize myself as sort of a thinker within urbanism. I'm very much an entrepreneur, someone who sort of develops new ideas, new practices, new methods, and test those in real life. And then on the private side, I'm also a mother, and I'm really interested in sort of a healthy urban lifestyle. So trying to balance that on an everyday.
Wow, that's fantastic. Last week I had a conversation with my coworker and I told her that the toughest position is to be a mother. But I see it's really hard to manage like both to work and taking care and being a mother. So a big, how to say, big applaud or big respect to all the mothers. Hela, how did everything started that you're passionate about urbanism and the city? Was it when you were studying, maybe even maybe when you were a kid?
Yes, I grew up, you could say, as a kid outside of Copenhagen in a sort of traditional sleeping town. Growing up in a very quiet and calm place, I guess. I was just very fascinated by bigger cities. So immediately after my graduation, I went to London for a little over a year because that was the biggest metropole and the biggest city I could think of in relatively close vicinity of Denmark. My passion around the complexity of cities actually continued when I began my studies in architecture. And I quickly found out that I was not so, even though I'm very passionate about design, I was not so passionate about the building detailing and the construction documentation part. I was more intrigued by the political powers, the complexity of the design process when dealing with bigger site developments. So I chose that to be my career path, you could say.
Very amazing journey.
Yes, thank you. And of course, through my studies, I met Professor Jan Gehl, who was leading the Department of Urban Design. And I had the pleasure of working very closely with Jan also after my graduation as an architect in Denmark. And that led to the invitation from his side to begin the office together. And later on, you could say I've also extended my studies both in the US and later on also with business schools in Denmark and in Switzerland. So I've taken a long journey, you could say, to to continue this passion about cities, about people in cities, and finding new ways of delivering on a more healthy and sustainable way of life supported by the built environment.
I wanted to say thank you so much again for giving your time and for inspiring us. So, COVID-19, this situation. I saw you launch in the Gehl Architects, you launched covid19.gehlpeople.com. What was the aim of it? Was it just to inform, or what is the main aim of it?
Yes, we went out fairly early in the process already, end of March, early April. We were out surveying public life and people's perceived safety and their perception of the use of public space. And we were also mapping the public life activities across four particular cities in Denmark. The reason for doing that was basically to very quickly observe what are the changes in people's behavior, because we need to know more about what people are doing, what they are attracted to, what they are afraid of, in order to then be aware of those behaviors when we begin reopening our city centers, reopening the various institutions, and so forth, so that we can take these people matters into account.
Yeah, and this move was very quick, as you mentioned. It's already in March when everything started and when the government was going out a recommendation. So were you partnering with some other like public institution or companies?
We were partnering with a private foundation called Realdania. They were supporting this whole focus on data because their focus is also to provide as much knowledge as possible to support good decision making in the urban policies, you could say. And we were also supported by Copenhagen municipality. The way we engaged, you could say, was that we used the digital platform that we have developed and the digital tool, which is an app that we've developed to make it very easy for people to engage and to go out and actually collect this urban life data on their own. So with very few instructions, we were able to, in a very, very quick manner, gather all of this very sort of experienced live data, you could say, from these various cities. And what we found out was that beyond the obvious that certain parts of the city centers were very abandoned and we had very little life there, what was maybe more interesting for us and surprising was that a lot of the local neighborhoods, the local parks, the local streets, local playgrounds, pocket parks, uh, parts of the harbor front, some of those more local neighborhoods were actually more lively, more active during COVID than compared to our historic data from these particular sites. So, despite the fact that we had the advice from government that vulnerable people should stay at home and we should be physically distancing, we saw more people out and about in those local neighborhoods.
Did you see that people started to use the city in a new way, like different function in a new way?
Yes, we have seen more people being physically active. More people basically had the need for physical exercise. I think that's natural when people are working from home and they are not getting their daily commute. So we definitely saw people being physically active, doing more sports outdoors. We also saw people just playing outdoors more. Obviously, families with kids were out playing, but surprisingly, we also saw elderly people socializing. And in Denmark, we did surprisingly again see a difference between gender. So women were meeting in small groups or in pairs, whereas men, typically across these four Danish towns, were meeting, were sitting outside alone. So maybe that is showing us something about men being socially connected differently to their neighborhoods or to their friends. We don't know exactly why, but we are trying to dig deeper now into the understanding of those differences that we've seen.
And did you see there was a difference between people in the capital and the people in the other cities, or they almost behave the same?
It was very much the same. I would say though that we've seen more activity level in some of the smaller towns, also in the city center, where people are using the city center for recreational purposes. Whereas in Copenhagen, the capital, the city center was very had very little use. So we might need to think differently about our regional retail centers, and that's not only for Copenhagen. I think that goes for Stockholm, Gothenburg, Malmo, other major cities in Sweden too, and globally for that matter. I think we have to rethink our urban retail cores so that they have more than one use. It basically is too fragile when there is only shopping available, and it shows very clearly in times of a crisis like the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. And this is actually the core of this episode. What are the lessons that we are learning from the COVID-19? Did we really fail in planning livable cities? So what are the different lessons that we learned from the data?
Well, we definitely see that what people are attracted to is green city spaces, places where they have space enough to be outdoors, but at a distance to other people. So we need more green spaces in our cities. That's definitely something that we can see. We also need to think more about how people can be physically active. Um, and that's both locally in the neighborhoods where they live, but also in general, we have seen more people walking, more people using bicycle networks. And you could say Copenhagen is already a bicycle city, but globally, we see right now a huge emphasis on bicycling. And we see maybe more of a fear of using public transportation systems. So rethinking how these software mobility networks can be even more promoted is going to be incredibly important.
Whose responsibility to transfer these reflections and data to actions on the plan? Is it municipality, architects and urban planners, property owners?
Well, a lot of these things are systems related. So in some way we do need the overall city planning to take these learnings into account. So when it comes to the forward-looking transportation and mobility planning, the fact that we need to have greener spaces, more focus on climate action and climate adaptation and so forth, greening our cities, a lot of those responsibilities lie with our public sector municipalities. But I do think that there is a lot on we've also seen this revival of the neighborhood scale. And at the neighborhood scale, I think many stakeholders and companies and associations and private people, for that matter, can take action. And that is where we also see this link to a more social resiliency. We've seen a growing number of Facebook groups, for example, where people are connecting, finding ways to help each other with social or with daily errands, just socially connecting in new ways. We've seen people taking more responsibility for local shops that they shouldn't close, or associations that where people are willing to continue paying their monthly fee to a theater club or to something else, to make sure that that organization and small organization is actually surviving. So on the local scale, I think we have an opportunity to find new ways of engaging with our urban environment, and that becomes much broader than just pointing towards the municipality.
Yeah, so it's need a co-collaboration mindset.
It's a collaboration mindset, and it's a collective action mindset. And I think in that way the pandemic that we've been through now is just further spurring energy into some of the trends we've already seen for a while. We've already seen this trend with focus on sustainability and climate adaptation and greening of our cities. We've already seen a focus on more sustainable integrated mobility networks. We've already seen this revival, you could say, of PPPs and partnering and collaborating in new ways. But the pandemic right now is just further emphasizing some of these major trends that we've already seen for a while.
Yes, exactly. So how are you in Gehl going to take actions? How are you going to use the data and the learned lesson to transform it to make it actions?
What we are doing right now is you could say different things. One track is to really make sure that we are able to help our clients and the cities we work with, and our the private clients we work with and so forth, enabling them to engage digitally with communities and use public life data to support their decision making and their planning efforts and their sort of more temporary actions that they are taking right now. So there is a strong emphasis on digital solutions right now, and I know for a fact that we are absolutely not the only company, of course, looking into this. The fact that many people are now working from home is spurring this immense amount of innovation into digital services and digital ways of being present. So that's one thing we are doing. We are also actively working and trying to support more of our clients to open up cities, opening up institutions and companies and so forth in a safely manner, so that we can take health and hygiene and so forth into account. One example to mention is that for the past couple of years, we have been in collaboration with Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in the US and have developed a framework that we have called Inclusive Healthy Places. And it's a framework that enables, you could say, organizations to really focus on inclusivity and on health as design measures, you could say. And we are now implementing this across the US in partnership with community development organizations and with the American Planning Association, providing technical advice and technical expertise to help implement this nationally. So that's a very timely thing right now, where the focus on both health, but then also inclusion, with everything that we are seeing right now, all the structural racism and debate that we are seeing globally right now, is very, very timely. So I'm particularly happy about that project right now.
Yeah. So you're taking actions, cities are taking actions, and many people are doing this. The question is, what is the new normal? Are we going to have a new normal that we are adapting to the situation, more going more environmental friendly, or we are just going to continue as how we did before planning cities?
It's incredibly difficult to know. I think some economists might be arguing that we are going back to normal, because everything that history has learned us is that things happen, but then we quickly return to some state of normal. I would like, though, to have a more optimistic view and believe that we can actually build back better. I think we are in an opportunity. We have an opportunity now to collaborate. We know so much more than we did after the financial crisis or after other historic pandemics that we have experienced. So we actually have an opportunity now. Some might even say an obligation, but we definitely have an opportunity to build back better, and to not just go back to normal, but actually make sure that our cities, our communities, our companies are learning and are adapting to a more sustainable way of operating, of living, of collaborating, of transporting goods and people, and so forth. We are putting all our energy, you could say, as a company, into enabling this change to happen now, because we really need these moments of crisis to seize the opportunity in the change to make the future better.
And also, again, thank you so much also for giving your time. I know you're super busy always, but I'm thankful that you give time to record this podcast and to inspire us as well.
Absolutely, I'm happy to.
And I wanted to talk with you about one point about including people that, for example, you collected data from people when it was this situation, COVID-19. Some cities did that as well, but when there is no COVID-19, when life is normal, not so many companies, municipalities ask about how people feel, how do they use the city, and so on. So it feels a bit unfair that when you want to collect data, you ask people, but normally you don't do that. So what is your reflection about this?
Well, I would say this is exactly what Gehl has been focusing on for the past 20 years. We are trying to make people visible by making public life and human activities in cities visible through data. So we have been working with this for 2 decades, and many cities and our clients are beginning to see the value of public life data, and to use different ways of you could say using human data to support process of planning, to support process of decision making. But I agree with you. We are not fully there, and we need many more organizations and cities to value people and people data as one of the things that we naturally care about, because we all know that what is getting counted is actually getting more attention and more focus from our decision makers. So the more we can again use this opportunity and state of change to also focus on inclusion and getting the voices of more people hurt, I think the better. And one way of doing it is to record this behavioral data so that we see what's happening in our cities and don't just rely on traffic data or data from Google or Apple or other economic data sources that we might use.
Yes, very interesting. And there is a quote says, if you can measure it, you can develop it. So collecting data is always interesting and important, especially for us as urban planners, architects.
Yes, and especially because I think there is a lot of assumptions about what the good life is based on each person's own individual preferences. But the danger of that is that we don't hear from the people that are not visible. We don't hear from people that are not engaging or doesn't feel that they can engage. We don't see the people who are not visible in the public spaces. So it is incredibly important that we use different data sets to get a more complete picture of what people need and what their preferences are in cities globally.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. To reach out to all the people, actually. Helle, in this podcast, I'm also exploring together with my guest about what is a smart city. I believe this topic needs like a whole new season to talk about it, but I would love like we just kick off the topic, and I would like to ask you, what is a smart city? How do you define a smart city?
Well, a smart city for me is a people-oriented city. It's a city that enables people to intuitively make smart choices. And by smart choices, I mean what is best for them as individuals, and then collectively also good for the community and for the planet. And you know, to enable people to make smart choices, I think we need to provide them with information. We need to provide them with intelligent new digital platforms and tools that allows them to know how they can lower their own impact, how they can make smart mobility choices, how they can, in a healthy way, maybe use different parts of the city, and so that they don't only go to the crowded places. I can think about many ways where technology can actually support intuitive, smart, sustainable, and healthy choices for people.
So it's about a city for people, not a technological cities for robots.
Exactly. It's always about cities for people.
And recently, you work with city development in these 20 years. What do you see? Do you see, are we heading toward the smart city as the one you defined, or how is it?
Well, it's been fantastic over these 20 years, I think, to see actually the shift towards more sustainability, the shift towards livability in cities. Now with what is happening right now, with all the focus now on systemic racism, we can hope that we can also, in fact, uh, make cities more inclusive and cities that are in fact for everyone. So there is still a lot of work to be done for cities to be fully equitable and healthy, sustainable places for all people. But I do see a very positive trend. What worries me right now is maybe more on the sort of transnational scale and the political leadership level of our countries, where we've seen an inability to agree on sustainability goals, on data protection, um, on economic sort of support packages, ways of solving migration. So the inability to merge and to meet each other at a political level, at a national and international scale, is what is worrying. I am, however, very positive by looking at the leadership that cities are taking, that mayors are taking, the leadership that many companies and cultural institutions are taking, and not the least the fantastic sort of changed agency that we see with young people and with communities of color that are really sort of taking action these days, and that is very, very positive and provides us hope.
Yes, exactly. Very promising. And how does it feel? You're planning cities for people, and now what you see is like cities are empty. And what is your reflection about it when you see cities are empty? And have you been through this like tough moment like this before?
No, we've never. I don't think the world has ever experienced something like this before to quite the same extent. We have sort of we have, I don't know, four different crises happening at once. We have a climate crisis, a pandemic crisis, a financial crisis, and now also a structural racism crisis. So everything is like happening and at once. I do think, however, that the emptiness of cities right now is reminding all of us, everyone, almost on a sort of bodily, personal level, we are all reminded of the importance of being connected with other people, having access to basic human needs like breathing fresh air that is not polluted, having access to green space, any kind of open space where we can both meet others but also express our opinions. And when we haven't had access and opportunity to all of that, we really experience and feel what it means not to have that access. And I hope that on the other side of this crisis, that everybody will remember the importance and what it feels like not having it, so that we can have even more leadership and even more support for public life and public spaces and sustainable systems in our cities globally.
Yeah. So you feel good about the future?
I feel hopeful, yes. And I've always chosen to have a very sort of positive view on the future. But I must say, right now, I think politically things can go very wrong and go in quite the opposite direction. But I hope that we will be as human beings and communities that we can come together and make the smart choices.
Yes, hopefully. And Helle, thank you so much again for a very interesting talk.
Really, I'm happy to contribute.
And now I would love like to sum up the episode with some few questions if you don't mind, if you still have time as well.
Mm-hmm.
What is the special thing about your favorite chair, the wishbone? Are you using it a lot now when you're home and working from home?
Well, I guess what that symbolizes for me is just very sort of pragmatic, human, very simple design. It's also very Scandinavian in its approach, but I sort of, by looking at that and by using that on an everyday basis, we have it as an office chair in our office as well, and it just keeps me reminded of these very basic human and pragmatic design approach.
So you fall in love every time you see it.
I would say I just use it.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite public space? Like you have a favorite chair, you have a favorite public space that you'd be like, oh my God, I want to be there every time.
I think I really thought about that question, Mustafa, and I'm not sure that I have one favorite public space. Um, I love so many different places and public spaces in different cities globally. But I can tell you, I almost daily use the lakes because I live very close to the lakes in Copenhagen, and our office is very close to the lakes. And I'm fortunate to be living in a walking distance and cycling distance to the office, and walking along the lakes on a daily basis to and from work, and if I'm biking or if I'm taking an evening stroll, is just provides me that sort of feeling of perspective and reflection, and um, having just a little bit of access to that public life and community feeling. So that is a very sort of, for me privately, I think that is on a local basis the space that I use the most.
Wow.
So it's also a space when I come back to Copenhagen and I get to the lakes, it's a feeling of getting home.
Okay, that's a very beautiful picture that you painted.
Thank
So
you.
I guess Copenhagen is your favorite city, right?
It
Or
is in many ways my favorite city. It's also a city that has come very, very far in its development of public spaces as a complete network supporting both vulnerable communities, families with children, physical activities, cycling, and so forth. So I do use the Copenhagen uh, model very much as an example for other cities to be inspired by.
yes. So, Helle, what is the next step for you going to be?
Well, the next step for me is to really further develop our operating model as a company, because what the COVID and the current situation is forcing us to think about is how can we continue delivering globally and reduce our environmental impact but maximize our social impact. So I want to start experimenting with engaging through partners more globally, through contractors more globally, by simply finding new ways of delivering our projects, so that we can both be relevant at a hyper local level, but at the same time utilize our international expertise. That's a project that I have, as a headliner for that, I've called it sort of the Gehl communities, and I need to find a way of further developing the Gehl community.
What a big challenge. Good luck.
Thank you. I need it.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to follow the journey. So it's very important project as well.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
How would you like to summarize our conversation, your reflections, and three takeaway messages to all the people that listening to you?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to learn from our situation right now and understand what is going on by being even more attentive to people's needs. So I would urge people to really focus more on engaging people and learning from the use of public life data. Secondly, I hope that we can come out of this crisis and build back better. So really think differently about how to implement sustainability and to make sort of rapid prototyping of what is working. And thirdly, I think we need to learn new ways of collaborating, new ways of working. So I hope that we can see more change agents out there. Again, I'm very inspired by the young people and the demonstrations that we are seeing right now. That provides us a lot of hope.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for the hopeful and the powerful messages.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
My pleasure. So, three hashtags as well for the episode.
I would say community resilience, COVID solutions, and people first.
Thank you so much again, and hopefully see you in coming episodes.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. Please follow Instagram and subscribe YouTube channel for live talks. If you have any great story that makes our city smarter, please contact me. Urbanistica has been produced in collaboration with Landskapslaget, working with landscape architecture, urban planning and design, based in Stockholm. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.